The first time Daniel realized anger was running his life, it was not during a dramatic argument or a loud fight. It was a quiet moment. He was standing in line at a small coffee shop on a cold morning, holding his phone, already late for work. The man in front of him kept changing his order, adding things, removing things, asking questions that felt unnecessary. Daniel felt the heat rise inside his chest. His jaw tightened. His thoughts became sharp and fast. Why do people have to be so slow? Why does this always happen to me? Why can no one be considerate? By the time Daniel reached the counter, his mood was ruined. The coffee tasted bitter even though it was made exactly the way he liked it. When he reached his office, a coworker greeted him kindly, but Daniel responded with a short, cold reply. The coworker stepped back, confused. Daniel spent the rest of the morning irritated, distracted, and tense. At lunchtime, he sat alone and finally noticed something strange. Nothing terrible had happened. No one had insulted him. No one had tried to hurt him. And yet he felt exhausted, as if he had been fighting all day. That was when a quiet thought appeared in his mind, one that he could not ignore. This is happening too often. Daniel had always believed his anger was justified. He thought it was a sign of intelligence, awareness, or high standards. People were careless. Life was unfair. Anger, he believed, was simply the natural response. But now he began to wonder something new. What if anger was not protecting him? What if it was slowly draining him? That evening, Daniel visited his uncle Samuel, a calm man who always seemed unbothered by anything. Traffic did not upset him. Rude people did not disturb his peace. Even serious problems did not shake his voice. Daniel had often admired this about him but had never asked how it was possible. They sat on the porch as the sky slowly turned orange and then purple. Birds settled into the trees. The world felt unhurried. Daniel sighed deeply and spoke honestly. "I feel angry all the time," he said. "Small things bother me. People bother me. I do not want to feel this way anymore." Samuel listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, Samuel smiled gently, not with amusement, but with understanding. "Anger is not the problem," Samuel said. "Believing you have no choice is the problem." Daniel frowned. He had never thought of anger as a choice. It felt automatic, powerful, and immediate. Samuel leaned back in his chair and looked at the sky. "Anger feels sudden," he said, "but it is not as fast as you think. There is always a moment, very small, where you decide how to interpret what happens." Most people never notice that moment. Daniel wanted to argue, but something in Samuel's voice made him pause. "Let me tell you a story," Samuel continued. "Many years ago, I was just like you. Everything bothered me. One day, a man shouted at me in public for something that was not my fault. I felt anger rush through me like fire. I was ready to shout back. But then I noticed something strange. The anger was demanding something from me. It wanted my energy, my attention, my peace. And I asked myself a simple question: what do I gain if I give this anger what it wants?" Daniel listened closely. In that moment, Samuel said, "I realized anger was not happening to me. It was asking for permission." That sentence stayed with Daniel long after he returned home. Anger was asking for permission. The idea felt uncomfortable, almost insulting. But it also felt strangely empowering. If anger needed permission, then maybe it could be denied. Over the next few days, Daniel began to observe himself. He did not try to stop his anger yet. He simply watched it. When a driver cut him off, he noticed the familiar heat rising. When a coworker interrupted him, he felt the tightness in his chest. When his phone battery died unexpectedly, irritation appeared like an old friend, but now, instead of immediately reacting, Daniel asked himself a quiet question: what story am I telling myself right now? He noticed that every time anger appeared, a story appeared with it. The driver is disrespectful. The coworker does not value me. Life is always working against me. These stories felt true, but when he examined them closely, they were often assumptions, not facts. One evening, while waiting in line at a grocery store, the cashier made a mistake and had to restart the transaction. Daniel felt the spark of anger again. But this time, he caught the story forming in his mind. This is wasting my time. This should not be happening. He took a slow breath. Then another. He looked around and noticed small details he had never paid attention to before. The sound of quiet conversation. The soft hum of the refrigerator. The tired but focused expression on the cashier's face. Something shifted. The anger weakened, like a fire losing oxygen. Daniel realized something important. Anger thrives on resistance. The more he fought reality, the stronger it became. When he stopped arguing with the moment and accepted what was happening, anger had nowhere to stand. This did not mean he became passive or careless. It meant he stopped demanding that reality behave according to his expectations. As days turned into weeks, Daniel practiced this new awareness. He still felt anger sometimes, but it no longer controlled him. It became a signal rather than a command. A message rather than an order. One afternoon, a coworker criticized his work in front of others. The old Daniel would have reacted defensively or angrily. But now, Daniel noticed the sensation first. The tightening. The warmth. The urge to speak sharply. He paused. He asked himself another question. Is my peace worth proving this person wrong? The answer came quietly but clearly. No. Daniel responded calmly, thanked the coworker for the feedback, and suggested discussing it later. To his surprise, the tension dissolved. The coworker seemed almost disappointed, as if they had expected a fight that never came. That night, Daniel lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He felt something unfamiliar but deeply comforting. Space. Space inside his mind. Space between events and reactions. He understood now that never getting angry did not mean never feeling anger. It meant never letting anger take control. It meant recognizing that other people could not reach inside him unless he opened the door. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel slept peacefully. As Daniel continued his journey, he noticed a surprising change in how people treated him. Conversations felt lighter. Conflicts ended faster. Some people even stopped trying to provoke him altogether. It was as if his calm had created an invisible boundary that others could sense, but the greatest changes were happening inside him. One morning, Daniel received a harsh message from someone he trusted. The words were blunt and unfair. His first instinct was to defend himself. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to type a long response. Then he stopped. He noticed the familiar pull of anger, the way it tried to rush him into action. He remembered Samuel's words. Anger is asking for permission. Daniel put the phone down and went for a walk. The air was cool. The streets were quiet. With each step, his thoughts slowed. By the time he returned, the urge to respond had faded. He read the message again, this time without the emotional charge. He saw something he had missed before. The message was not really about him. It was about the other person's stress, fear, and frustration. Daniel replied with clarity and kindness. The conversation ended peacefully. What could have become a long conflict dissolved into understanding. This experience taught Daniel one of the most powerful lessons of his life. When you do not react immediately, you often see the truth more clearly. He began to understand that being unbothered was not weakness. It was strength. It required awareness, patience, and courage. Anyone could react. Very few could remain calm. Daniel also learned to stop taking things personally. He realized that people act from their own inner worlds, shaped by experiences he could not see. A rude comment often had nothing to do with him. An impatient tone was usually a reflection of someone else's internal struggle. Once, while riding public transportation, a stranger snapped at him for standing too close. Daniel felt the initial sting but chose not to absorb it. He stepped back calmly and said nothing. The stranger avoided his eyes, suddenly looking uncomfortable. In that moment, Daniel understood something profound. When you do not carry anger, you do not give it a place to land. Life did not become perfect. Challenges still appeared. People still made mistakes. But Daniel's relationship with these moments had changed. He no longer felt the need to control everything. He no longer believed that peace depended on other people behaving correctly. Peace, he discovered, was an internal decision. He started practicing simple habits. When irritation appeared, he breathed slowly. When someone spoke harshly, he listened beyond the words. When situations felt unfair, he reminded himself that fairness was not required for calm. Over time, anger stopped feeling like an enemy and started feeling like a teacher. It showed him where his expectations were too rigid. It revealed where his ego wanted control. And when he listened carefully, it always pointed him back to the same truth: you are responsible for your inner world. One evening, Daniel visited his uncle Samuel again. They sat on the same porch, watching the sunset. "You seem different," Samuel said with a knowing smile. Daniel nodded. "I still feel anger sometimes," he said. "But it does not own me anymore," Samuel nodded in return. That is all anyone can hope for. As the sky darkened, Daniel felt gratitude. Not for a life without problems, but for the ability to face life without constant inner conflict. He knew now that never being bothered did not mean avoiding people or isolating himself. It meant carrying his calm wherever he went. It meant choosing peace again and again, even when anger knocked loudly, and each time he chose peace, it became easier. If this story helped you see anger differently, remember this: you always have more control than you think. Calm is not something you find in the world. It is something you practice within yourself. I share stories like this every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.